Listen, I can do my introduction, but that doesn't really count. If anybody who arrives at 6:30 can't object. Listen, it's wonderful. Thank you all for coming. It's really a fantastic event. This is a test of the capacity of this room, because there were so many enthusiastic attendees. I'm going to talk incredibly briefly to introduce Daniel and Ken. There are so many friends here that I feel that almost any introduction is superfluous. But Daniel is a architect and fantastic scholar from Chile, who now teaches here in Bath and lives in London, and published a book of conversations with Ken when he was at Columbia, 3 years ago?
The book was published 3 years ago, but the conversations were already like a decade old. Yeah.
And then I think you told me very firmly I wasn't allowed to call you a curator.
Oh, well, you can.
You could. I'm delighted. And I'm going to say sort of even less about Ken, except that when Kendra and Martha and I were having a discussion 10 or 11 months ago about what a public program in this space might constitute. We invented this idea, or that the ideal was to get Ken here in conversation with another scholar, and that became the sort of lodestar. And it's actually, so it was an ideal which we never thought for a minute we would realize. And now here you both are, and it's fantastic.
So thank you.
For those of you who don't know Drawing Matter, this is sort of what we do, which is have conversations in front of drawings. And we see drawings as a sort of neutral space where theory, history, and practice can be allowed to kind of conjoin in a way that the academies and other institutions, for some reason, find really very difficult. And the idea is a very simple one, which is that sometimes the drawings can tell us more about a building or the process by which it came into being than the building itself. I'm going to hand over now to Daniel.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. And I think I can say we would like to start by thanking Neil, Kendra, Martha, Rosie, Jasper, Matt, and Vera, who have been extremely welcoming. And we were here last week to choose the drawings. And it's like being in a candy store to be here and to be brought all of these options. We did come with the idea that we wanted to talk today about buildings, if not in London, in the UK. That's probably the concept of what we will be saying today. And I emphasize this because let's say that if this goes well, we might have a follow-up with material that is not in London and not in the UK, hopefully in the spring. And we can start, I think. The first drawing we chose, and it was a suggestion from Neil and the team, was the Durham Bridge, the Kingsgate Bridge from around 1963, 1964, which is a very, Ove Arup and...
Right. Yes, well, I think it's great to have a work by Arup. Arup in an earlier moment before it became a huge office. And I think I've not seen this bridge myself, but I hope that to go to Durham in the near future. I've not seen Durham Cathedral, so Sylvia and I would go there very soon. And I think what is great about it is the ingenuity of the way the bridge was made, because these kind of diagonal pilotis are sitting on a base, and the base rotates, so that the bridge was built in two sections and then rotated. There's a small piece linking the two rotated parts, and there is, of course, a land-based part. But it's just a very elegant piece of construction. It's a pedestrian bridge, I believe, built for the purposes of enabling students to get access to the cathedral more easily, between the university and the cathedral, I think. And so that's where we began.
And you were commenting that Arup taught you.
Oh, yes, of course.
AA,
Well,
no?
the amazing thing is that.
See the screen, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, the amazing thing is that, well, they were looking for future clients, of course, but both Ove Arup himself taught us concrete, such as we could teach architects anything about engineering, and Felix Samueli taught us steel, and these two offices basically were the primary structural engineering offices for the emerging generation of architects after the 50s, the 60s, in fact, and of course Stirling, for example, used Samueli, and these offices, of course, created their own young assistant engineers who then took over the firm, so that Eric Newby became the primary engineer for Stirling. And so that relationship between architects and engineers, I think, was particularly fertile in this period, in the 60s. And it leads me to talk about Stirling, above all, and about Stirling's Churchill College, Cambridge entry. Well, I should say, of course, James Stirling and James Gowan. And I think it was, it's obviously a very monumental piece. And actually, Brendan quipped, you need a sort of key or special kind of code to get into the damn thing. But because it is so kind of hermetically contained by this wall of student accommodation and by the berm, I think it's an extraordinary project. But the most beautiful thing about the project is not so much present in this drawing, and I don't know where one would find the more didactic document, but I think the more didactic part is the fact that it was an exercise in brick construction. Very, very beautiful brick construction, I think. And the Stirling and Gowan together, I think that the great achievement is the way they built in brick. And of course, Leicester Engineering is the beginning of that. But the other thing that also links to Stirling is this Camberwell.
That's the library from Churchill, the Camberwell.
Yes, right.
This one's here. Here. The Brunswick Park School, those two, which are very well. They follow similar logics, no?
Yeah, they're based on that
right
composition, and what I find. What I suddenly thought when I saw this, that because these are prefabricated concrete panels, I think, or at least in this design they were. And what is impressive is that they already have this diagonal groove on them, and which is really the vocabulary of St. Andrews.
Precisely.
Yeah. And I think that's very impressive. And but what is a little odd, in fact, is the heaviness of the structure of the roof system. the kind of factory roof system, which is strangely heavy, and in this drawing at least, and the lightness of Leicester Engineering Building, the crystalline roof, which remains, I think, extraordinary achievement, and I, well, in their previous discussions, I mentioned the fact that even, and that also says something about architectural culture, because Leicester, I think, in the end, was modeled, the inspiration for Leicester was the students. There was a particularly brilliant student in the A called Edward Reynolds, who I think died like soon after he graduated, in fact. And there's a factory by Edward Reynolds, which in my opinion is the origin of Leicester, compositionally speaking, and also, well, maybe the roof structure of the engineering laboratories. I mean, it was a factory, so it has sort of factory roof, and it had a tower, in the student scheme. So I think that is the beauty of looking at and talking about drawings, because they have a kind of inner history, so to speak, and they embody really the culture of architecture, and I think that's the great virtue of drawing matter, and it enables drawing matter, I think, through drawings to engage with the culture of architecture in a particular sort of informal way. Okay, next. What do you want to? Shall we move now?
We can move. We can say something about Camberwell, but a couple
which you went to see.
Yeah, I went to see it on Saturday, which is not at its best moment. It's scaffolded, and it's been fenced, so a lot of the original sense of what we can see in this drawing, and it repeats this. It's not the same strategy as Churchill, no?
It was very close.
But the mound elements that you see here are present there. And it's more or less, one would imagine, of the scale of the library. So there is there is that. The difference, and we were commenting this before with Rosie, this element, I think, I follow your reading of the drawing, that it's prefabricated concrete and it anticipates St. Andrews, which is some years down the road. But this one is in white brick, which probably affects, and this is a comment that Rosie made, that affects a little bit how it has aged. Because his red buildings in London have aged rather well. But
right. Yes.
But this one is in a strange state and about to be renewed.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was in white brick.
Yeah. Something maybe also we can commend the axonometric as a representational mode, no? As the chosen way of representing.
Particularly true of Jim
right.
and Gowan together, I think. They constantly used it, and of course it was a way of showing the spatial and formal attributes of the work in one drawing. Yeah.
There's an interview of Gowan that Joseph Bedford did in 2009. It's in the Architectural Exchange in his website, and I think I understood correctly. He said that it was only the two of them in the office at this point in time.
Yeah, probably.
Which is still surprising, no?
I can believe it.
Compared to, and I think probably Tony Frampton will confirm, was it only you when you designed the Lisson Gallery, or were there more people working with you? Yeah, sorry.
I didn't have people working with me.
Right. So I think that's something common about, because we're going to talk later in the afternoon, in the evening, about the Lisson Gallery. So thinking that all the production of drawings from Stirling and Gowan that we see on the table came from both of them by contemporary standards. It's quite surprising, I think. And the fact that they didn't win, I think, is something that it's still appalling. I think.
Well, it was obviously too extreme for. I mean, it's pretty extreme, and but anyway.
Yeah.
But they had other works in this period, like Selwyn College, for example, which is more organic, and residential dormitory project for Cambridge, which was quite organic in its plan, and also built it, projected in brick. Not they didn't win that competition.
Yeah, but completely contemporary to Leicester Churchill. It's almost, if I understand correctly, they begin to design Leicester in '59. I wonder if we could say something about your drawing there.
Yeah, well, I think
which we could bring closer to. Oh, it's there. It's dead center.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, it's again, it's this axonometric story. So, and it's an attempt to represent one unit, which is only the downgoing unit, because the upgoing unit was too difficult to draw. Anyway, it's very hard to understand how one would have made an axonometric, an explicatory axonometric of a upgoing unit. It boggles the mind. Anyway, I for obvious reasons, it shows the downgrowing unit. Well, I hinted at the fact that Leicester was based on an idea by somebody else, by a young guy called Edward Jones, and Edward Reynolds, excuse me, and Edward Jones is here, and another Edward. In any case, this idea of scissor apartment, interlocking scissor about a central corridor, is an idea that somebody, and I don't know who, perhaps I've made it my business not to know who, in the LCC Architects Department came up with this idea. And I think the only other example of its use is in the Hanseviertel in Berlin, where Backamer produced a version of the same crazy, complex section. And what is interesting and ironic is the fact that, there are two things I have to say about it. One is Douglas Stephen, who was, and Ed Jones is here, was just an amazingly generous and risk-taking person who just let assistant, if an assistant was enthusiastic and he halfway thought it was workable, he would let them go ahead. And so I had the privilege of designing this building, from top to tail, and that wouldn't have happened to me without Douglas. Douglas's admonition to anyone who sort of was going off the rails would be, "You are out of your tiny mind." But there wasn't too much of that in my case, although I think I was out of my tiny mind. But in any case, the reason why it got to be realized, that's kind of really sick, ironic and sick, is that the developer got more units. Because the alternative was duplexes on either side of a corridor with duplexes facing east and other duplexes facing west. And I was fanatically interested in the idea of this crossover section because the bedrooms would then, in all apartments, faced east, and the living rooms in all apartments faced west. And an obsession, of course. But it also got more units in. So then the developer, who lived above the office, in fact, or worked above the office, was very happy about that. And the fact is, I think that, and that also says something about the totally changed economic epoch, that this developer made enough money out of this apartment block to retire and go and live in the south of France, out of one building, a rather small building at that. So it was another period of history.
I think we could go back 10 years in time and bring the
yes,
the collage.
There's another thing I would like to say about this building by Douglas Stephen and Partners, on which I've worked. Well, I guess people have seen it already, but anyway, is that Peter Smithson. This is, of course, Alison and Peter Smithson's application of the thinking of Golden Lane to Coventry, to bombed out Coventry. Although I think it's much more about the system of building it than it is about the actual sectional organization that is shown in the original competition entry for Golden Lane. And, it's also very, well, it is about this kind of serial construction, prefabricated construction with a tower crane, etc., etc. In a moment of time when tower cranes were extremely rare in Britain, and of course they were not rare in Germany, but they were rare here, I think, at that time. And but it just has a very poetic quality because it is bombed out Coventry, and it's very beautiful photomontage, and the drawing. Well, I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. But the thing I hadn't thought about before is it partly sort of anticipates Park Hill because it departs from the orthogonal game on one side, so that it's no longer a Redon block in the Corbusian sense, but also more organic.
It also, I think the comment on Park Hill is very interesting, because when I went to visit Park Hill, I thought immediately of Candilis Yossik's wood and their Toulouse Lemirae.
Because of the stem. Geometry, yes. Yeah.
And it anticipates that. But also, again, maybe bring back the conversation a little bit to representation, because the difficulty of constructing these images, for me, this is the type of images that when you see it in person, I didn't even know what scale it was. It's something I teach, and I'm always projecting in a screen, and you kind of lose touch with the fact that it's quite a contained and small drawing, and more to the point that they deform the axle to match the perspective of whatever angle they got that aerial photograph with.
Yeah.
And it makes you think how many days would have gone in constructing this one image for the competition.
But I don't think it was in the competition.
I
don't think it was somehow, because it doesn't relate.
It doesn't relate to the
site of the competition
right.
at all. No.
And the more famous one is probably the one with Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio,
right?
In the Street and the Air,
yes,
which is not on top of a.
And you don't really see where is the Street in the Air here
right.
exactly, But the non-orthogonal continuation of the idea, that anticipates Park Hill.
Yeah. I think
yes. I think we covered that.
We covered that, yeah.
This brings us to Peter Meyer's drawing of
yes, we should move.
Of the Brunswick Centre. Yeah.
I think if we
Okay, right. Let's get rid of some of that. Yeah. Okay, good. Yes. So, Daniel, you want to?
Yeah. Well, start by saying this drawing is from the same. This drawing is 69, and as you mentioned, done by one Peter Myers, who had the drawing in Australia, as we were told by Neil.
Yeah.
But when we came to select the drawings, I think it was, for some reason, the drawing we spend most time talking about. The fact that to start with, it's not an extrusion. We were saying something about that, and maybe in contraposition to Neve Brown's Alexandra Road, for example. We could start by commenting that if you want.
Yes, I mean that's yeah, I mean there was this kind of habit somehow or other, I think, of conceiving the building, conceiving housing in section. I suppose also that was true of the work I did with Douglas. It's basically an idea in section, and so and I think we were all in the same year: Patrick Hodgkinson, Neve Brown, myself, and John Miller, and Adrian Gale, etc. We were all in the same year, but the idea of housing conceived in section was a constant compulsion, I think, basically. And I have this memory of someone saying to me in the States when I can't remember now, in a jury or something like that in Cornell, Klaus Herdig, in fact, saying, you could put a window in the end wall, and so that the apartment at the end of the series could have an extra benefit of this window. And I didn't do that in the building in Bayswater, and there's no window in the end wall. So, and there's no window in the end wall of the Marseille Unity.
Only on one side.
On one side there
it has balconies and on the other it's completely blind.
Because it faces south.
Right.
It faces south. Right. And and so so there is something of the extrusion aspect about this drawing, but I think the end walls do have, if I remember correctly, windows, or a window, and also, well, I mean, the other thing that I admire in this work is the way in which it is a city in miniature, and therefore, yes, well, it became for me an exemplary kind of megaform. I kind of got this bee in my bonnet that if a work of architecture could achieve a certain scale, you could create a kind of small world that would kind of complete itself as a sort of microcosmos within the fabric of a city, and like the Palais Royal for that matter. And I think Colin Rowe makes this remark about Brunswick Centre, that it's London's Palais Royal or something like that, I think. And so I think that's its huge virtue, this that all these units look into this public space and public amenities, and it would be realized like that eventually with I think when Camden takes on board a developer client, right, and it finally fleshes out, I think, the public domain that all the units look onto. And although here we have, a certain set of living rooms all faced west and another set of living rooms all faced east, and exactly what I tried to avoid, but more importantly for Patrick was this looking on to this common public space. The other thing that I remember talking to, I never worked. I did once work with Patrick. It was not successful, largely because he wasn't interested and I wasn't good enough. But, yeah, and embarrassment. And, but we did talk about the virtues of a conservatory in 19th century conservatory versus a balcony, in given the English climate. And I think it's one of the big virtues of the Brunswick. But somewhere Brenton has something to say about the Brunswick. Where is Brenton?
Yeah, I can say quite well.
You live in it after all. Yes. But you want to say that's not enough. That's not enough, Brenton. It's quite a lot. That's not quite a lot at all.
There aren't actually any windows in the end walls of
No.
the Brunswick, either north or south.
Right.
There is a means of escape which gives it a little bit more intrigue than
just a
Alexander
blank
Road, where I believe, and Edward might correct me, but Lee Brown used to talk about endage. Yeah.
Oh, you did? I didn't know.
But
Yeah.
there is another issue, probably. Once the head lease it became housing for Camden. Camden would have found it difficult to vary a type, because of the.
But of course, the very
notion about particular notion about equality of the family.
yes, I see. Yes. Of course. Well, that probably was also underlying the whole discussion. And right, but then the other thing that one could talk about is the problem of west and east facing units today. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's single glazed, so the west facing units have raised quite severe problems during the summer.
But Brendan, it seems you point about Alexander Road. You have on one side you have a railway, north side, south side. You look south, and you have terraces. In this project, you have the east-west difficulty, and then you have the back on the street, and so it's very negative for the streets. It doesn't have accommodation facing the streets.
Right.
And that's the distinction between Alexandria Road and
Yeah, it's a really fascinating issue, in fact.
I think so.
I mean, because it does create a place, in that sense. It's
certainly the space for century is very agreeable.
Yes.
It's wider than Alexandra Road for sure, no? The space in the center.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's also,
Even if
it's also two-sided, so
Right.
they talk to each other.
That's that.
Whereas Alexander Road is much more to do with sun penetration.
And the railway behind.
Yes.
although it did lose some width when they refurbished, no?
But the
Because
one
they
thing
put
it
more-
doesn't
no,
do,
not so much.
Alexander Road is
Right.
still an
No,
extrusion.
but the central space.
Yes.
And so it doesn't.
That's good advantage.
But and how about that side? The one that's more, when we came to see the drawing, we were saying that it's even
Well,
futurist, no? The structure on the,
Yeah, I think it is rather futurist. Just
it's on a completely different
the way
scale.
the concrete is handled. That takes one to Rue Vavin in Paris, 1912, which is a first, I think, setback block built, because Casa Gradinati, it's about the same date. So it's an extraordinary building. The way that building is weathered, because it's this tiled structure, right? It's incredible, I think. So Rue Vavin is certainly a prototype for this.
Yes. But as I bring the Lisbon Gallery drawings, I
Yeah.
was thinking in the essay, the mega scale, the megaformas urban landscape, it's probably one of the smallest examples that that you have in that essay, no? In comparison,
This one.
because it's there.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I know we do have something else because there's a drawing by James Gowan that he studied.
Oh, yeah.
Alexandra,
That's fascinating.
the Brunswick Center for
Mm.
the complex in Greenwich, no?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sorry for that.
Mm. And that was that built, the complex in Greenwich? It was. Yeah. What's it called? Yeah. So do you know this drawing? It's yeah. And it also has a cinema, it seems. Oh, anyway, I don't know what it is. It looks like a rose, in fact. Yeah. Right.
I think this is the previous to last set of drawings that we will see. This is
This one good.
the Lisson Gallery
This one gallery. Yeah.
by Kenneth Frampton here in the audience, so hopefully,
But he's hiding.
yeah.
But
You did design it, meaning there was nobody. There was nobody working with you at the time. That's a fact. Okay, I wanted to emphasize that. I visited. There you go. I visited for the first time this Saturday, so I have a couple of things to comment. But probably you can start, and we were talking about this drawing in particular and the way, let's say, the instructions from the architect.
to himself, actually.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of diary of intentions. It's a beautiful drawing.
Yeah. Extremely difficult couple of sites, no? Because the part of the gallery, the older one, is on Lisson Street, and then the new building is on Bell Street, which is we could call the new building. And I think we brought out a drawing that could express a little this one. Yeah, but very difficult. At least I would describe as a difficult sites in the sense the facades are not parallel to the street. The way of circulating in the interior is really like a puzzle to be solved, and in that sense, it's extraordinary. That would be my introduction, at least, with office and a different type of program in the upper floors and the gallery in the ground floor and the first floor. And I believe you will do an exhibition with all the sketchbooks, no? Yes.
Yes? Yeah. So, I think our party piece is probably coming to an end.
Yeah.
With this
I think
very ingenious work.
the last thing that will be shown is a roll of 20-foot roll of 6 meters for those of us that think in metric.
Right.
Long drawing of Netherfield.
Yeah.
The
There it
Netherfield
is.
scroll.
Yes, there it is.
Let's see, let's make sure we get it the right way. I think we need to start on the other end.
It's 20 foot. So roughly 6 meters, 1971.
And more than one author, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And two, yeah, right. Yeah, but the actual drawings also.
Yeah.
Okay. We need snakes. Yes. Keep it down. Right.
Drawing by the Grant Group for low density
Which was
housing.
built, in fact, right?
Not built.
Yes, Bill.
Built?
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah.
You've not seen it.
I've never been to Milton Keynes, I must confess. Not yet.
What's that? Ah, yes. So let's try and take them off.
Why can I say something about
Yeah, please do.
because this takes us back to 1973 or 72, so 50 years old. We were very young artists in our early 30s. And what was amazing about the project was Derek Walker, the city architect of Milton Keynes, employed us on entirely on the evidence of two previous schemes. One was Chris and Jeremy had built Runcorn, not built, but made a competition for Runcorn. And Mike and I made a competition for Portsmouth. And the two competitions that gained Derek Walker's interest. And he arrived at Mike's studio, where we were building the Pravda Tower for the exhibition at the Hayward. Jeremy and Chris were building a Tackling Tower. And seeing these two constructions, he just said, do you want a job? And we said, yes, fine. So you can do 1,000 houses in the complete. Who now will continue on that basis now? An act of extraordinary sort of risk, and we took it on. And that is how Netherfield happened, based on the evidence from our previous competition of Runcorn and Portsmouth.
Right.
And it got built. And this drawing, the four of us all worked on this drawing on a table at the AA with Penny was there at the time. Penny was graduating from the AA at the time. It's funny, nice coincidence, Penny was here. It brought us together at that time. And Alvin, well, the reason why we were at the AA doing this drawing there was that we found working in an advanced factory unit in Milton Keynes, where everything inside was yellow, there was no windows, and everyone was going slightly mad. And so we suddenly said, well, we're going to work elsewhere. And we were brought into Roy Roach's office, being said, you either work in the AFU or you're fired. And dear Derek Walker stood up for us and said, well, we need to keep these guys working on this job. And he brokered a deal. And so we remained in the AA and completed the drawing there. That was, thank you, Alvin Borowski, who allowed that to happen.
Very good.
And so it got built, and we didn't get fired. And then Jeremy won a competition for Northampton Pyramid, and the grunt group, as it were, got up and attempted to do that job. Sadly, it didn't happen.
But you won the competition.
We won the competition. Jeremy won the competition. It was in 2 stages, and it was just up the M1 motorway, a bit further up from Milton Keynes. But sadly, it didn't happen. But this did.
But is there any photographic documentation of it?
Yes, we've got photographs. I mean, I wasn't informed we would be doing this evening, so we haven't.
But you asked for it.
Sorry?
You mentioned it to me.
No, I did mention it because we were aware that this drawing had been taken by Neil into the archive. So we were aware it might be discussed.
But you know what I think is fascinating is it's an incredible work, and it is weird, you know, that I personally don't know of any single photograph of it.
Well, Ken, the interesting thing about this was that we were told quite recently, I think, Mike, 2 or 3 years back, they were going to knock it down because they saw it as being over-rational and a bit boring, long lines.
Yeah, of course.
And then the residents rose up in support, because what had happened over the 20 or 30 years that it had been built was the landscape had advanced, and the existing trees that you see in the hedgerows, historic hedgerows, in the plan had developed, had matured. And so the residents were very happy about it, in that it had an aspect of rationality on one hand and nature engaging that. And so, much to our surprise and delight, the residents thought it was quite okay. In fact, Brendan and I went there quite recently and had a very good pizza and sat there in the sunshine. And it was fine. It felt like a place. Because originally it was seen as a little over sort of militaristic in its
Yeah, I can understand that. But
enthusiastic long lines. But the long lines are set against a gentle curve. So what is not obvious in the plan
but also
is the
you get
relationship between the
also
landscape
you get
and the wall.
you get a fall off, don't you? There's a slope here.
Yes, no, it means that it goes from one story where it's to 2 stories to 3 stories to 4, which gives you
Right.
a basically built-in distribution of house types. Anyway, it's nice to see. I couldn't remember, Mike, it's 20 feet long. Yeah.
You seem to be a bit sobered by that fact that it's so long.
What did you say?
You seem to be somewhat, regretful about its length.
No, not at all. It commemorates a partnership of 4 of us, which included Chris Cross, who lately died. But otherwise, there were 4 of us. Now there are 3 of us. There's only 2 of us here. Because Jeremy doesn't seem to have come this evening. Jeremy Dixon, who was part of the grunting.
I'd like to ask you, where did that title come from?
You might, yes.
It was bestowed upon us by Peter Cook.
Yes, I claim responsibility for the grant. I used to
do grunts.
I granted boring lectures. While the lecture was going on, I would go.
It's hardly a grunt, though.
But the origin of the grunt comes from America, where the working drawing people were called grunts. So production in America, working drawings were done by grunts. And Peter Cook assumed, because he were in love with the graphos, thin line drawings, pre-computers, he thought that had aspects of American production. So that's where grunt came.
I see. That's interesting.
You spent time in America? Are you aware of the grunt?
No, I didn't. I've never heard this word.
You're not aware of the American grunt.
I think now that they would be calling them like.
It comes from where? Well, it also comes from the military.
That's its origin.
Well, as far as I know, having worked in American offices, science I worked with a few years ago, they always talked about grunts. So we could have a mild disagreement, which might be a good idea, actually.
Actually,
we have nothing to.
I can't now see the point of the 20-foot long drawing with bits and bobs of the plans.
No, Michael, the point about the long drawing allowed the 4 of us to work on it at the same time. It was so long. So one person can draw the plans, the other one does the access, and so on and so forth. So it allowed us all to work on it.
I know, but it is a bit extreme.
That was slightly the idea, Ken, for it to be extreme at the time.
Yeah.
Because we had just been threatened with the sack.
I can't remember why it was conceived to do all the plan sections, elevations, all in a long single drawing. What was the point? It was actually started by Chris Cross, who's now died.
Well, sadly, he's not here to justify it.
Can't tell us why we did it all.
It was an idea. Do long terraces, you do a long drawing. The long point.
Very good. Anyway, it's probably the longest drawing in the house, I'm guessing. But,
one point you make about Churchill College, which I think is very nice to see that axle here, because whenever one went to Jim's office on Gloucester Place, that drawing was on the wall with green. So what's very weird here this evening is to see the green on other drawings associated somehow in my mind with that axle, which Colin wrote famously called
Blenheim of the Welfare State. No?
yes,
Blenheim of the
the
Welfare
Blenheim
State.
of the Welfare State.
Yeah.
So that green I always associate with that drawing. So it's very odd to see the axle sort of ungreen.
Right.
And
Well,
that
we
was
can-
always on the wall in Gloucester Place. And I personally am very sad that project never won. And
Of course.
because not meaning to be sort of unkind about Shepherd Robson, but it wasn't
No,
wasn't
obviously not.
wasn't as strong. It's a very strong scheme and
Yeah,
influenced that school in Southampton.
Yeah, right.
Not even second
They're
place
connected. Yes.
in the
Yes,
competition.
just green is associated
Yeah.
with that drawing. Yeah.
That's it, I think, no? Maybe
Yes.
any questions from the audience?
I wondered if you could ask Tony to talk about his client. Or I'll ask it more directly. What did you have to teach the client in order to do the listening?
Well, you're talking about Nicholas Logsdale, who was the director of the Listening Gallery.
Yeah.
It was a very perceptive man, and very spontaneous. I had done some work for a writer, Michael Newman, who introduced me to Nicholas. And Nicholas met Nicholas at an art opening, and he asked me a question about my interests in architecture, and I gave him an answer. He said, "I'll hire you." So it was a moment of tremendous spontaneity, and then it was a kind of uncanny process where you treated like an artist. You know, you can be very charming, but also be completely horrible. But the first gallery was very easy to do. The second gallery was more complex to do. As for teaching and things, I don't think that's what it was. I mean, there was a degree of neutrality in that project between him and also the artists that consulted a couple of times, which made fundamental input. So the rest of it we just did.
Thank you. I agree.
All right. Other comments?
Comments or questions? We can bring back some drawings if needed.
With another field scroll is it's only going to get opened up to look at on an occasion like this when there's a long table, very long table, 2 foot long table, and in other words, it's going to stay rolled up forever, because whenever is it going to be able to be put out like this? This is the only time it's ever been put out, except for an event at the Old House's drawing matter premises in Somerset, where we did have a ceremony to pull it all out. And this is the next ceremony. I can't imagine it ever happening again.
We roll it out every other week.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I'm sure you do. And Grant,
Take it for more.
Grant over it. I think what I see are 3 different worldviews in the architecture scene. The work of Patrick Hodgkinson, for example, very particularly focused in his period, and he emerged from the area as a significant proponent of the kind of architecture that he made. And it was a time, and my experience of it was very limited because I was a leading student, and it was a time of significant amounts of public housing building, specifically in Camden, and only in Camden. And then Ed in Germany, I refused to use that term invented by Peter Frick. I had a completely different view of the world and architecture in it. And I remember a lecture from them working in the studio. We were working as undergraduate students in the studio at the same time. So they were, well, first of all, fantastic stylish. They all had Porsches, which was Western Belgian models. And this is not peripheral, it's actually central to a different way of doing architecture. You know, Patrick was more of a kind of architect, and these guys were much more stylish. Their conversations, well, at least with Chris Cross that I had, was about their interest in a kind of abstract architecture. Some of it, this is my view, I can't remember if I got it right, but an interest in constructivism, in a type of highly geometric architecture which proposed to have, start to have a social function. And then the work of my generation, which was completely different, when there was very little housing. We were in a regime where Thatcher was declaring that there was no such thing as society. And we were making buildings which made public space when the war good, like outside the front of the listening room. And interestingly, the majority of work at that time were in art galleries, peculiarly. So the 70s was a time of depredation. There wasn't, well, in architecture, I can't remember. So I was working for Chapman Taylor, of all places, and which indicates the kind of lack of work in university. But so it was very strange that suddenly there was an economic upturn, which represented itself in very interesting work made by artists and quite a lot of interesting galleries. For example, John Paulson's PPOW gallery in New York, and galleries by Daniel Talesnik. So in each phase we discussed, there was a very different source of money and demand for buildings. And that's what I see with these buildings. I see this way
Yeah, yes.
Just a question. You've, I'm sure, seen just a few more drawings in your life than I have. You've been critical and observant of lots and lots of drawings. What's changed, do you think, over the years in architectural drawings? Have you seen things stay the same? Have you seen the use of drawings change, or what they hope to achieve, or are there constants?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, I find. And maybe I don't work so much from drawings, but from images. I mean, I think, speaking for myself, I react to images. And so therefore to build work, and maybe that's the reason why I made this remark about Netherfield, which is I've never seen any images, so I'm someone that I think really needs to see images of the work to begin to even understand what it is. And so I don't think I ever sort of start with drawings somehow, and but rather with images. So that's a funny confession coming from me, I think. But since I have this, yes, a bit of a kind of, I'm disturbed by the use of images, when they are, when they are kind of spectacular. I'm more interested in the yes, and that brings up an interesting memory, which is that Jim Stirling always used the same photographer. That photographer was Richard Einzig. That photographer used a plate camera, and I realized from the photographs of Leicester, mainly that perhaps, but also Ham Common, that a plate camera was capable of registering texture of a work, which high-speed film was not capable of doing. And yes, I mean, and so there was a huge difference between the photographs of John Donat, for example, and Richard Einzig. And Jim always used Richard Einzig, and I have this memory that this guy was using a plate camera, and that brought out the texture of the work in a very powerful way. Actually, Helen Binet is here somewhere or other, I believe. Yes, don't you think that that is an aspect of plate cameras that?
I'm still using.
Sorry.
I'm still using it.
Yeah. Right. I see.
Definitely
Yeah.
makes a difference.
And that question of the material becomes evident, and I think high-speed film doesn't register that. So images are photographs are more important to me than drawings, I think. And so I'm not really aware of the way drawing has changed. I mean, I suppose drawing was more objective. I mean, this very large roll is a kind of maybe that was the reason why Chris Cross wanted it all on one drawing, because it is sort of manifestation of a total objectivity. I mean, I think that it's a polemical gesture, in insisting on its coherent, all of a piece coherence. Yeah.
But shortly after that, it's turned to computers and computer imagery.
Yes.
And
that changed everything.
it's changed everything. Are we going to see computer drawings in the collection here? I don't tell you that I know of, but I've got some drawings in this collection, but they're all pre-computers. Everyone used to say, we used to take the drawings to the printer and wait and say, someday my prints will come.
Oh, yeah.
How long did you work in this drawing before you? How long did you work in this drawing?
That particular
Yeah.
drawing? I can't remember.
It'd be a couple of weeks. Something like that. There was no design going on. The thing was complete.
Yeah.
It was largely just
I suppose it was rolled out as you went.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was using pen and ink.
Yeah, right. Sure. Of course. Yeah. Sorry.
I was wondering if you could. I was sort of struck by the different points of conversation raised by yourself and Daniel on some of these buildings, with respect to buildings that have been visited by you in person and seen by you through drawing. And I was wondering if you could both speak to the experiences of buildings as communicated through physical bodily interaction with buildings, through film and video, which is much more something being used by architects these days, than versus photography and drawing at these different mediums. Yeah.
You want to answer first?
Well, I've always said, I respond much more to images than through drawings of late, I would say. I mean, drawings are. I'm much more interested in the detailed drawings, the drawings of joints and drawings that bring out, the materiality of the work. But of course, photographs by plate camera also bring out the materiality of the work. But even if one's initial contact with the work, speaking for myself, is an image not by plate camera, but an image by a high-speed film. It's still the way I enter into a work, I think. What arrests me about a work, or, yes, and contrary, what causes me to neglect thinking any more about a work, for example.
But Ken, I find it a little perverse because I have seen you pore over drawings for decades. So I don't understand.
Well, I don't think I do, anyway.
When we look at these, we see the diagrams of the idea. We can never see that diagrammatic idea presented in an image, I don't think.
No, but you see the result.
But that's the role of the sketch. The sketch is crucial to the genesis of any project.
Yes, I agree, yes.
There isn't a project without a sketch. And that can be the most humble graphic device.
Well, there was an exhibition here of the Italian architect. What is his name? Yes, Ponis. Yeah, I mean, Ponis's drawings are very much about sketches. Yes. And
Brendan was saying the sketch needs the napkin, and the napkin needs a good restaurant. And coming to that, in a general sense, I might go eat something.
yes, that's very good, Edward. I think you've hit the spot. Okay. All right, there was another question though, I thought. Somewhere. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the question is about the kind of, we're all here gathered talking about drawings. What's the value of a drawing? I suppose, here we're looking at drawings of a finished artifact or a resolved project. I've heard Neil writing about how actually it's the kind of rubbing out and the kind of working artifacts in a drawing that tell you something about the project and about what the architect is thinking. I'm curious, I suppose, why we're looking more at drawings of finished pieces than, for example, sketches, or in fact, if in these finished pieces we kind of find traces of the thinking. Is that something that resonates with you?
Yes, but we don't have, other than the drawing of Tony Frenton, we don't have a drawing here which reveals the thinking, And in that case, it's not a question of a sketch, it's a question of an orthogonal drawing where the architect is seems to be putting down remarks about his intention, on the drawing, on the orthogonal drawing, which is not exactly a sketch either.
I should say we have 47 sketchbooks for the listening.
Well, that's quite something, yes.
Well, that sort of brings me to something about contemporary architectural production. The finished drawing is generally a computer drawing. So, what's the kind of benefit or advantage or the je ne sais quoi of a hand drawing, of the orthogonal hand drawing, versus a computer drafted drawing?
Well, I think a very important thing is this question of the sketch. I think that Edward just remarked on that fact. And that in my experience of being both a student and then a misspent life, so to speak, teaching, I think it's a question of whether or not the young architect is able to sort of do a thumbnail sketch. I think is really crucial to being able to produce a work that has any direction or thought or intention. You know, that there has to be that capacity, and that's the capacity I think that the computer has in many ways eliminated. That mind-hand relationship that you're talking about.
Can I just say that the issues in making a drawing which is digital are exactly the same issues making a drawing in any other way. It's to do with line weight, position on the page, point of view. It's like the difference between a drawing and an etching. I learned digitally and have done for a long time. Not very sophisticatedly, but it's definitely better than hand drawing. It's much more accurate. You know, what you draw, you know, actually to scale. When I drew on tracing paper, which I did in the beginning, it stretches, you couldn't measure off it. You can measure off of it with digital drawing. The advantages are enormous with digital drawings. Things like storage, distribution, and it doesn't have any artistic introduction. But if anything, it's even more expressive in my experience.
The last part again?
It doesn't have any deficit of expression. In some ways, in my experience, it's more expressive digital drawing.
Well, here we have
where in the process does it become digitalized? Because then, like, I've seen a lot of your sketches of, like, obviously the listen, and there's like this kind of joy in the isometric that I can see then when I'm at the building, say. Like often in buildings, I see something that I find satisfying because I can imagine the drawing almost. And yeah, do you draw digitally in isometric?
Well, if you remember there's two drawings. First listen gallery, it's an isometric, which we passed isometric. Another drawing that wasn't shown was a projection of the second listen gallery. The first one I drew on line, the second one I drew on line. And so they're not that's very cool. This is from my project.
So that's been more measured.
You can sketch in CSV. You can make judgments. So I don't have any. I mean, hand drawing in the sketchbook is very valuable because it's very immediate. And for a while, I decided that because my office wanted to look at sketches, they took my sketches away because they found that they could find ideas in the sketch that I hadn't recognized. So I decided I would draw the sketches digitally on an iPad with my finger. So I did that, but it didn't work. And there is something when you're thinking immediately about the project, for me at least, of working directly with a paper. But I can't tell you why.
Well, I think it has to do with the hand-mind relationship. You know, it is kind of, in that sense, a craft, I think. You know, this immediacy of the hand and the piece of paper. Mm.
But writing digitally works. You can chop it back together. I know you write by hand.
I do. For that very reason. I mean, one of the reasons. Yes. Yeah.
There's a question here.
Yeah.
Would you then say that a sketch is maybe closer to an image than a scale drawing? Sorry. A sketch is closer to an image than a scale drawing is. And if so, where are you drawing the line between them? And maybe is that why you're attracted to the sketch? Because it's not an image, but it's very nearly an image. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what I said is a bit surprising also to myself, that in fact, I realized how much a photographic image means to me. And in terms of, if you think of the world we live in where there are a constant flow of images, that a certain image will appear and arrest your attention. You will gain something from the image that holds your attention, that arouses your interest, that you see from a particular image a certain quality that you think is of value. Other than images which are just have a spectacular character, and are not intrinsic. I mean, I suppose it's got to do, for me anyway, the intrinsic quality in an image which causes me to sort of look for more information about this particular work, and I think that these are two different things. I mean, the question of the hand on a piece of paper in terms of initiating a concept, I think can't be, in my opinion, it can't be replicated. Unlike Tony, I don't think it's possible to replicate it. And in a way, you almost said that because you said you started to do sketches on an iPad and it didn't work. Yeah. So, but it probably didn't work as feedback to yourself either. I mean,
I actually can't tell you why it didn't work. It definitely didn't work.
What do you mean by it didn't work?
Well, when I looked at the sketches, there's lots of
Yeah. Okay.
Dinner.
Dinner, I think. Yes, right. Right. Thank you.